Hello, and welcome to another episode of Monster Monday from the Ready to Die channel. Using the rules for making monsters in Pathfinder Second Edition, I stat out monsters to use in my own games and share with the community. In this video, I'm going to explain the design process for the latest creature I've put together. Someday, I'll have some original monsters to present here, but for the time being, there's still plenty of interesting monsters from other sources to work through. I also operate a blog where these monsters can be found alongside a Pathfinder First Edition and D&D 5e versions that I unfortunately cannot link yet. Today's topic is the vibrant and violent Valomyr, a blinding bug from the game Dauntless. In its home game, the Valomyr is defined as a radiant behemoth that has evolved in the concentrated radiant layers of sky to become almost alien in its appearance. This description, in conjunction with its ability to summon colorful cascades of light, particularly its flash jump, led to me trying to tie it in with some outer planes. I leaned towards associating it with the Bifrost and the Aesir creature trait, leading to that inclusion among its traits. Handily, the monster of Dauntless come with their own range of levels. With the Valomyr having a possible level of 10 to 13, I went for a bit of a middle ground and decided to build it as a level 11 beast. This is another big burly boy, lacking in speed or agility, but my decision to make it a beast did mean I had to give it a slightly higher intelligence. Interestingly, this is the main difference between animals and beasts in 2nd edition, not the possession of magic abilities. Given some of the Valomyr's powers and the way it makes use of them, I was fine with settling on this marginally higher intelligence. Tying the Valomyr to the Bifrost influenced me somewhat in regards to its perception score, using a high bonus and a teeny tiny reference to the Guardian of the Bifrost and Watchman Supreme, Heimdall. On the defensive front, the Valomyr lacks any resistance seen among monsters of these sorts because its resistance would be to radiant damage. After a brief consideration on how to represent radiance, which included using positive or force damage, I decided it was best to essentially treat radiance as plasma. To this end, I consulted Starfinder, where plasma weapons deal an even split of electricity and fire damage. Since these are separate elements within Dauntless that the Valomyr can be affected by, I refrained from giving it resistances to these elements. Instead, I give it a high armor class and a moderate HP that leans towards the high end of that category. Like the Odiba Tarasu from last week, the Valomyr uses a high fortitude save, a moderate will save, and finally a terrible reflex save due to its abysmal agility. In my research on the Valomyr, it barely used attacks, mostly just seeming to incidentally bump into characters. However, it felt a little too weird to design a monster without any strikes, it almost becomes a hazard at that point, so I included a foot and horn strike, both using a high attack bonus but not exceeding a moderate damage value. Instead, the Valomyr relies almost entirely on its abilities. Chief among these is its Deploy Radiant Drones power, even if it is heavily toned down from Dauntless. In the original game, the Valomyr can summon a full lineup of these drones to effectively create a wall of lasers in front of it, or creating spinning disco balls of death around it. In an effort to keep these somewhat disparate ideas while also making a balanced ability, I have this baseline power effectively function like a summoning spell, being a 3-action ability that summons units that have 2 actions, though these actions are split among them. The Valomyr can even sustain these drones like a summoner, with its command drones action. A point of order that I want to bring up is that it both doesn't have a limit to the number of drones it can summon, as long as it keeps using actions to deploy radiant drones, and the command drones gives an action to every drone it has summoned. These drones are fairly fragile and use both a terrible AC and attack bonus for its level to keep them from completely overwhelming players, but it is possible to build up a full swarm like the Valomyr does in Dauntless if the heroes don't destroy them. Another main ability of the Valomyr is its flash jump, which is one of the main means that the Valomyr uses to move around, being a rather sluggish creature. This functions as a pretty standard teleportation ability, like Dimension Door, but also damages nearby creatures. Since this deals damage in 2 different points and repositions the Valomyr, it uses area damage as though it were an at-will ability for its level, despite having a potentially lengthy cooldown. The Valomyr can also unleash blasts of radiant energy in 2 different forms. The first is a beam that it primarily seems to launch from its horn, represented by the high damage line effect of its radiant beam. For enemies closer to it, the Valomyr has its Radiant Burst, an eruption of radiant energy that it can seemingly release from anywhere across its body. It uses this ability with decent frequency, so I went for a lower cooldown and damage only a little bit higher than at-will abilities, while also including a function to knock creatures back and away from it, as per how this performs in Dauntless. Valomyr's final damaging ability is its Swirling Starflies, which again uses damage as though it were an at-will ability since it lasts for several rounds while also using a lower DC, similar to the DCs often used by auras. Last of the abilities that I was able to translate over is the Valomyr's Reflective Barrier. To keep the Valomyr from just spamming this ability and protecting itself while its drones whittle away enemies, I kept the frequency to an hour, while also adding the requirement for the Valomyr to be at half health or lower. A combo that I saw the Valomyr use in Dauntless was to raise this barrier and then unleash its starflies within to affect enemies also trapped in there. It would then flash jump out while they tried to break their way out. I didn't get to quite pull this off during the test of the Valomyr because my flash jump was still on cooldown, but I got so close. I wanted to work in some more aspects regarding light for the Valomyr, since the combination of electricity and fire might not entirely convey that. To that end, I included the Dazzling Radiance power that dazzles creatures when they critically fail against the Valomyr's abilities. However, while I added an ability the Valomyr lacks in Dauntless, there was also unfortunately something I didn't bring over. Occasionally, the Valomyr will drop crystal shards that can empower players to pick them up. This mechanic felt a little too gamey for me to want to include it in the build of this creature, but those that want to use it should have the Valomyr drop these crystals when it's struck by a critical hit, or maybe when it uses one of its abilities. I'd have them be simple things that can be activated with a single interact action, and then have them do things such as heal whoever picks them up, grant a status bonus to attack rolls, or provide a resistance to fire and electricity damage for a round. Once again, I made a weapon based off of the Valomyr. Weapons made from the Valomyr Dauntless charge up energy before unleashing empowered attacks, but something of that nature already exists in Pathfinder with the likes of Power Attack and Megaton Strike. In an effort to make weapons without stepping on the toes of such feats, I created a pair of pepper boxes that when wielded together let you essentially cast the Flame Wisp spell, though swapping out the fire for the plasma damage as seen in the Valomyr. I decided to have these be dual weapons, which is further developed by them gaining the twin trait when wielded together, in reference to the Austin repeaters featured in Dauntless that are also wielded in pairs. With that, we have completed the exploration of the Valomyr. Multiple Valomyrs may be overwhelming for players, but GMs looking to use them alongside other creatures might consider having them serve as mounts for Einherjar or Valkyries, other Aesir that may wrangle Valomyr in the realms beyond. As per its fight in Dauntless, the Valomyr is a sturdy foe that is heavily reliant upon its array of powers, only making the occasional strike. You can check out the Monster Monday blog or Twitter for the stat blocks, or hop on the Discord to join in the monster making and general tabletop discussions. These posts also include a Pathfinder First Edition version of the monster, along with a D&D 5e conversion. Thanks for watching, and have a monstrous Monday.